Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. I'm been gone for a bit because I got sick. Have to take care of our bodies. So, if you were looking forward to seeing videos and didn't see them, that's what happened. Anyway, trying to decide what I wanted to talk about today, and I've decided that maybe it's a good idea to talk about the gods and goddesses, whether they're real or not real, and that kind of thing. So I guess we'll see where we end up with this. First off, the idea of the gods. It's been around for a long time. Obviously, ancient cultures all had their own mythologies. Every Aboriginal culture out there had some kind of creation myth, and most of the early myths were about the earth being born, which would be the basis for the goddess religions, and the idea that nature and creation is a natural process, and that's the process that we see happening around us all the time. The patriarchal idea of the god came along a lot later, and that was more that the gods made us rather than we were birthed, as it were. And it can make a huge difference in how you perceive reality and how you interact with it, depending on your point of view. But whether they're real or not is an individual and personal question. So, to me, everything has a spirit. So, rocks have spirit, trees have spirit, all other plants have spirit, animals have spirit, and we have spirit. And the idea that there might be other spirits out there that are farther from our physical world than we are isn't much of a stretch for me. I don't see any reason why there can't be spirit beings that are different from and or bigger than I am. Even if I was completely in tune with all of my past lives simultaneously, I still think that there could easily be beings out there that knew more about reality and existence and had more access to that kind of information, so bigger. I think one of the reasons why people don't like that notion is a lot of pagans are pagans because they don't want to be Christians or Muslims or Jews. They don't want to be part of a patriarchal monotheistic religion. And in that particular construct, it's very hierarchical. It's like they're above us, they tell us what to do, they decide our fate, etc., etc. And a lot of pagans are more about taking personal responsibility for your own existence, making your own choices and decisions, and being your own in charge of everything. And that is not how to put that. It's sort of an example of the difference between a power with and a power over structure model. Starhawk talks about it in her first book, The Spiral Dance, and I've never seen a better explanation for the different kinds of power dynamics that are out there. And our whole society and a culture, and most societies and cultures around the globe, are actually modeled after the idea of a hierarchy of people above having more power and authority than people below. When it comes to magic, witchcraft, covens, relationships, paganism is more about power with, which means that I have power, my husband has power, you have power, and that we might be different, and I'm sure we are. I have my skill set, my husband has his skill set, I have my experience base, you have your experience base, and those differences do not say that your power is less or more than mine. It doesn't give any of us natural authority over other people and society to make decisions. And that is more of a description of what power with is about. It's about mutual respect, honoring one another, not trying to change each other, being more responsible for your own inner self, and changing yourself if you want to, but not having to follow an external set of guidelines and rules that tell you how to behave and what to do. Some people have a problem with that whole lack of hierarchy, especially if they're still involved in a job structure. Companies are built on a hierarchy, power over structure. You've got your CEO who can tell everybody below what to do. You've got your vice presidents who tell everybody below what to do. You've got your district managers, your regional managers, your individual office managers. And there seems to be this attempt to feel more worthy or more important by accumulating more people under you to be able to tell them what to do. And that is some kind of idea in society that determines your worth as a human being, which is artificial and has no basis in actual reality, in my opinion. So when I talk about the gods, I'm not talking about beings that are in charge of us and above us and tell us what to do. I'm talking about different beings that I have actually encountered myself that would be identified as gods because of what they are and what they can do and how they affect us. And certainly personal gnosis is the only thing that can tell you whether or not they're real. If you haven't encountered an energy that is completely foreign to you and alien to you, but obviously there and powerful and presents itself and says, here I am, this is who or what I am, then these are just going to be stories. But the purpose of telling the story is to share the experience of the possibility. Because sometimes we cut ourselves off from having these kinds of incredibly important experiences of a different form of reality because of the way we think about them. And we don't even know we're doing it. It's kind of like the thoughts that you have around the idea are the guards blocking and protecting your mind from dropping those barriers and boundaries to be able to then experience something that's sort of beyond your understanding. I've talked a little bit about some of the different kinds of spirits and beings and stuff that I've encountered over the years, but this is particular to what we consider God forms. And I would say that one of the most amazing and surprising and unexpected experiences I had was actually in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I was taking Starhawk's weekend workshop. She was doing a women's empowering weekend. There were about 50 women who were there. There were lots of other things that happened during that weekend that were just incredible. But this was like the first night, and I'd already met her and experienced that strange split in your subconscious idea of what someone's going to look like based upon reading their book versus meeting the real person, which is just sort of a very strange thing to suddenly become aware of, because you really don't know you've done that until you meet someone that you've internalized in your head. And she was nothing like I thought she would be. She was wonderful in all kinds of ways, but didn't match my internal image of who she was. So I'd already had that happen just that very first evening. And I was getting settled into, we had cabins. It was at a Quaker camp outside of Santa Cruz in the Loma Prieta Mountains up there. And I was up on the top bunk. And when I was a kid, I slept on the top bunk all the time, so I kind of liked the top bunk. And I was just laying there, and of course, when you're in the top bunk, your ceiling is a little bit closer to you than it is when you're not. And I wasn't, I was thinking about what was going to happen tomorrow and what the rituals might be, and it was, very exciting and looking forward to what was going to happen next, but that was all I had in my mind. I didn't have any specific in my head. And then all of a sudden, I say out of nowhere, this presence is above me. I mean, floating above me, and is really clear. I mean, it's just like if you took a 10-watt bulb and then brightened it to 1,000 watts, all of a sudden it'd be like that, where there was just sort of nothing really going on, and then all of a sudden, kabam, here's this presence. And it told me who it was, which was interesting because I had to look it up later. And, it didn't say it out loud in words, it just sort of oozed its identity. And it was Argus. Now, Argus is one of the old gods from Greek mythology and was one of Hera's original children. They called her the monster children that she had before she got together with Zeus and had the other gods. So this was like a more ancient form of a deity in that sense. And one of the things about Argus is that Argus has 100 eyes. And in the stories of Jason and the Argonauts and the story of the Golden Fleece, Argus was set to guard the Golden Fleece. And Jason managed to kill Argus in that setting because he had the musician with him whose music was just so incredible, it was like irresistible. And that guy played the lyre, and all of Argus's eyes closed, and he went to sleep, which was never supposed to be able to happen. That was why he was the guardian of the Golden Fleece. And so then they, killed him and stole the fleece. They're really nice guys, right? You got something special, you want to keep it safe, you got a good guardian, and then they just come along and slaughter him. Anyway, that's how the peacock got his eyes, according to the legend, because Hera was pretty upset about one of her favorite children being murdered, and so she took his eyes and put them in the tail of the peacock. Which is sort of aside from meeting Argus, but still, just a little background on the stories that are around about him. So anyway, I'm laying there in my bunk bed, and Argus is floating above me, for want of a better term. I'm not seeing him like with vision with my eyes, but I'm seeing him like inside of me. I don't know how to describe what that's like. And
it's like clairvoyance.
Yeah, the weirdest thing is that all of his eyes are open. I know this. It's like I have never felt so looked at in my entire life, ever. It's another thing that's hard to describe. But it was like I'm laying there, there's this God form, his eyes are all open, and he is looking inside of me. He's looking into corners that I don't even know are there, shining a light on my entire existence and my whole being. And I have not too many choices to make at this point. It's like my choice was, okay, I guess we'll let him look, because I don't think I could stop him from looking, and fighting it seems like a bad idea. So I just laid there and stayed calm, and he looked. And he looked for quite some time. He just looked and looked and looked, and then he was done, and then he was gone. And I was like, whoa, what the hell was that? And I actually had to look Argus up later, because I knew he had a lot of eyes, and he told me his name was Argus, so I had that much, but I'd forgotten the story of Jason and the Golden Fleece and all the other stuff. So it's always interesting when you encounter something like this, and then you have to do research to confirm it. So I don't know, it's like, I've not seen him again. Apparently he just needed one good look at me for some reason. Later on, found out that the peacock is actually one of the symbols of Starhawk's coven. And when I was telling someone else the story, they told me that. I don't have any actual evidence in written form or whatever to say that that's true or not, but I have no reason to disbelieve what he told me. There's always that caveat, you never know. And he thought it was pretty interesting that it was Argus. So his thought was that it was a guardian for the group or whatever that was just checking me out. I don't know. I don't have any particular dealings with Argus directly as that form in my practice at this point. Although I do have the peacock. I've always been attracted to peacocks, peacock feathers. I just love to have them around. And when I was doing a astral temple visualization and looking at my temple on the other plane, I found a peacock in the west, which was sort of surprising. So I definitely have some associations with the peacock. And the peacock has these particular special abilities. It has this ability to consume poisonous substances without harm, which when I'm thinking about it is sort of like my childhood and the things that I was fed, which were all poisonous things, and somehow I managed to come out of that and heal myself and not be whatever that would have made me into had it succeeded, which I shudder to think. But the point is, I had no doubt it was a god form. I had no doubt it wasn't human. I had no doubt it was real. I mean, it was clearly real to me, and it wasn't something I was trying to make happen. I wasn't on any drugs at the time. I usually tend to stay away from them because my mind is already so far open to things on the other side that when I have done them in the past, I lose control and I don't have the ability to control what's happening to decide whether or not I want to stop or not, because then I have to ride out the chemical changes in my body. And so I don't like that. Everyone's going to be different on that subject, but that's just me. Since that happened, I've encountered a few others. Our group here, we went through a period of time where several other groups of people decided for some reason, unbeknownst to us as to what their reasoning was, that we were some kind of a danger and they needed to attack us psychically and magically and all that other stuff, which I never imagined happening because that sure seems like a waste of time, but okay, fine. So when that happened, I decided we needed some better protection, maybe, or more consistent protection. And since I had a relationship with some of the deities that are here in our temple, I thought maybe one of them would, like to take on a specific role, like protect us from psychic attack or magical attack. And so I was sitting in the house and imagining I was here in the temple and just going around, excuse me, to the different altars and stuff and the different deities that we have in here and sort of checking in with their energy and saying, well, like, would you like to do this? And, a couple of them were like, sure, I'd do that, no problem. And then I got to Garuda, who's a Hindu deity, which we really hadn't been working with at all. I just saw his statue and there's something about it that I liked and I bought it. And it's been sitting in our temple on the southern altar for ever since. And he was like, beep, beep. And I'm like, okay, that's an enthusiastic yes, so I'm going to go with that. So then I did some research on Garuda, contacted another member and told her that Garuda had agreed to act as a protector for us. And she got a spontaneous chant from him. And then I got the rest of the chant later. So we actually have a special chant that the deity gave us to activate his protection and to sort of keep that going. And as I was reading about him, one of the things I read was that his followers were sometimes allowed to get a ride on his back. He's a big giant bird, so and he's got a cool story in and of himself, but so he can be really huge. And I thought that sounded kind of cool. And this one night, I was asleep already, and then all of a sudden I found myself on this wing holding on to some very large feathers, and my face was kind of like in the wing, and I looked up and I'm like, what the heck? And I'm flying on Garuda through the air, and then I look up sideways in one direction and then the other, and I see other people doing the same thing, and I'm like, okay, so it's true. The people really do get a ride on his back or on his wings or whatever. How awesome. So it's an interesting thing to open up to the possibility of this, and then being able to actually experience something like that. And then later we found out we had already had Garuda long before I bought his statue. We had seen this triangular bell, like, three-sided bell at a local shop south of us. And it had these carvings on them. And one was a dragon, and one was Garuda, who we didn't know. And when we rehung our bell up after this happened, and we saw this image of Garuda there, it was like, wow, we actually had a Garuda all this time and didn't know it. So it's that kind of stuff that always is fascinating to me, that these things will come to you and you won't know their significance until much later. And then all of a sudden it's like all these pieces sort of fall together, and you go like, oh, well, see, Garuda's been trying to get a hold of me all along. I don't know why we have a particular affinity with some of the Hindu deities at this point, but we do. They seem to like us for one reason or another. And it might have something to do with the fact that they're still being actively worshipped in their home country, so that they have that energy of communication that's currently taking place. They're not like way in the past and nobody thinks about their name anymore, or there's some obscure deity that nobody knows. And Garuda is interesting because he shows up on so many countries' flags. He's represented as an eagle, and a lot of times holding a snake, because he hates snakes. That's part of his story. If you're interested in learning more about him, it's not hard to find some stories about him. But, I've had encounters with the goddess, unnamed goddess energy, during rituals, and feeling that presence come in. And when we, as a group, do the sacred tree meditation, which I put up for you guys, when you're doing it as a group, you're pulling in energy into the center of the circle. And fairly often when we do that, as we pull in when we get to the pulling in the white light coming down, and then we get into the goddess healing chant, by the time we're finished, we have a full-blown manifestation of the goddess in the circle. Which, again, these things are hard to describe because they're not physical. They're emotional, spiritual, and ephemeral. So many people don't have those experiences. And if you are one of those people who doesn't experience that, it doesn't mean that everyone else who does is just crazy or making it up. It can just mean that you're not in the right frame of mind, and it's not the right time for you to have that kind of an experience, because it can be somewhat shattering to discover, like when Argus decided to take a look, we're not as big and grand as we think we are. And there's a lot more out in the universe than anybody imagined. So if you believe in other types of spirits, if you think that trees are awake and aware and you can feel their energy, if you're working with crystals and you're beginning to experience manifestations of crystal consciousnesses and encountering them more directly, just make room in your thought process to allow the possibility of something like this, or even more amazing, to happen. And that's what this is all about. Allowing yourself to experience the universe directly without definition and without blockages. So we have a better chance of actually encountering the universe on a more personal level. So, a couple of stories at any rate. And if you want to share any of your stories of encountering deities or what have you, that would be awesome. I would love to hear them. I always like hearing what other people have experienced. If you have any questions or any other aspects of this you'd like me to cover, please feel free to leave a comment and hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. It just lets me know that people are actually interested in watching the videos and it encourages me to continue to make them. So this has been Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. Blessed be.